good day, everyone. Welcome back to the show. My name is Sean David. Thanks for tuning in. In today's episode, we got a special guest in the house. He was the American Shaolin, Reese Madigan. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here talking with you.
Wonderful. Now, Reese, we started to talk a little bit before the interview, but I always start my interviews off with the same question, especially when it comes to martial arts. What is your martial arts background?
I began studying. I had a little bit of judo when I was probably 12, 13, and then a sort of a small martial arts studio was opening up in my hometown, and I was 13 years old, and I remember climbing these rickety stairs to the top of this room, and there was a scary guy who was waxing the floor. And he said, "Come back tomorrow," and I never left. So his name was Anthony Nespola. It was a combination of Goju-ryu, Shotokan, and Shorin-ryu martial arts. It was very old school training. He would walk around with a bamboo stick, and he would have no problem hitting you a lot. If you displeased him, he would often take it out on you. You were expected to obey without question, much like American Shaolin. This was not a new concept to me. And I was a timid kid. I was a shy kid. I was a skinny kid. I was very much like the Drew Carson you see in the movie. From 13 until I graduated high school, I got my black belt my senior year. At the end of my senior year in high school, he gave me a beating that I still remember to this day. The idea was just to get through it. He said, "You're not going to win." I remember my mom came to the shiai, the promotion ceremony, and there was no guarantee. You know, if you didn't get through it, you weren't going to get your black belt. And he being his first, he took it. He took his duty very seriously and literally mopped the floor with me. But I have to say, years later, the pride that I was able to see in his eyes when I came back, having done a martial arts movie, was something that I can't quantify. I'm so grateful that I was able to do it for that alone.
Now, talking about the American Shaolin movie, how did you actually get involved? Because that was actually, I think, your first movie.
It was. I graduated from acting school the year prior. I went to the State University of New York at Purchase, and I had done a play with Denzel Washington, Richard III, and I was a Shakespearean actor at that point. I had done that show, and I was in the middle of another play at the Public Theater in New York, and the casting call went out for kids, young people who could do martial arts, and I got the script, and I auditioned for it, and I had a call back, where I did martial arts, and I heard nothing. And I guess they were still searching for that person because I wasn't it. But I carried the script with me in my bag for another month. And then the phone rang and they said they haven't found who they wanted. I think they might have wanted somebody who had a TV show at the time. They couldn't get him. I auditioned again, a third time, and I think maybe a fourth time. And that's how I got the film.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So pretty lucky at the end.
I think to have any success as an actor takes an extraordinary amount of luck, and that was a big piece of luck that happened my way.
When did they tell you that you have to shave your head?
It was in the script. I just expected it was going to happen, and I couldn't wait. It was like, oh, I get to be, the master killer, 36 chambers. This is going to be awesome. I couldn't wait to do it.
Now, obviously, every shoot has its positive points.
I will say this one more thing, just in addition to the head shaving thing. So every day when we got our heads shaved, it was with a straight edge razor with no shaving cream in a barber chair before the shoot. And the barber was a great guy. But if you were late or if you got held up or something like that, everybody who had to be in the shoot that day got his head shaved. And by the time that straight edge razor got to me some days, it was dull. It was like getting my head shaved with a credit card. So I wanted to make sure I was always, early in the barber chair. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah, obviously every shoot has its positive points, its negative points. For those of you who don't know what a shoot looks like, it's super stressful. A lot of things go wrong. You can plan everything as perfect as possible. It's no guarantee that everything goes right. What can you recall from the shoot that sticks with you even until today?
I would say the people that I met, Mr. Zhang, who played Sanda in the movie, was an extraordinary actor. And, he's been in a ton of movies from The Last Emperor onwards. And I remember I would go to his room sometimes after the shoot because, there was not much to do. There was obviously no internet, no phone, no TV, no nothing, no electricity in some of these places. We were really out in it. But I remember sitting and talking with him about theater, about acting, about his life. And many of the people weren't really forthcoming about what their lives were like because it was 2 years after the Tiananmen Square massacre. And people were still afraid to speak out at all who were Chinese. But I had such an enormous appreciation for what this gentleman had been through and still the curiosity that he had and his passion for the performing arts and theater and acting and what's happening in America. What's that like? I've only read about it, so just really amazing relationships with people like Mr. Zhang or Zhang Hong, who I haven't spoken to, who was the female lead in the show. In the movie, I would say the relationships stand out the most. Just extraordinarily kind people and extraordinary martial artists. Fong and Yong, who were the two sort of right-hand men to Yuen Da and Yuen Kui, were extraordinary stunt people, and they would show me stuff on the side. I remember, this is from Bat Mai, so here's some movements you can take. Or Cliff, who played Sanda, Cliff Lenderman, is an extraordinary martial artist. And I knew nothing about any Filipino martial arts or any Thai boxing. And Cliff brought his Thai pads. And so on a day off, I'd get a private lesson with Cliff Lenderman, who was a world-class martial artist. Relationships like that are what I remember the most. Also seeing some of these places that nobody from the West had really ever seen. We were in these temples in the middle of nowhere. And there were some monks who made it through the Cultural Revolution, when so much of, the religion had been destroyed in the country, who sort of kept the flame of their passion and their faith alive. And I remember the gentleman, the Sifu that I studied with to get my Kung Fu training, to sort of augment my karate background, had taught me about some of the Buddhist deities. And in one of the temples, there was a tiny little hut that was responsible for paying homage to this deity. And I'd had a picture that I'd had laminated of this deity. And I showed it to this monk who'd spent his entire life at this temple. And his eyes brightened up like he couldn't believe that this person was showing him this thing. In many of the villages, they'd never seen a white person before. So that was a great education. They looked at me like I was a ghost, because I was in these temple robes and people would do a triple take, because I'm the whitest of white boys. I mean, I would just be this pale, as I said before, they called me baby bird head in this, and we all lost weight because of the food and the intensity of the shoot. So it was interesting to have these kids look at me and just touch my skin like I'm a ghost. It was a very, very useful lesson in what I grew up with in the United States.
When we talked before, you told me that you injured yourself during the shoot. Can you please?
Yeah, a bunch.
Can you please tell my audience what you told me, because that's very interesting?
Oh, sure. Well, there were a couple of injuries, but I got lucky. We were doing that Mui Fa Zhong, the Plum Blossom Posts training sequence, and it was at the end of a long day, and I was up on these poles, probably, anywhere from 3 to 6 feet in the air, trying to figure out the choreography that they were trying to teach me just to do. And I zigged when I should have zagged, and I stepped off the pole, and I hit the ground. And as I was going down, I could think, oh, this is going to be bad. but I ended up not breaking my ankle. I just twisted it really, really badly. And there was no ice or first aid on set. And so they took me to, I didn't tell you this part, they took me to a country hospital. My ankle was swollen up like this. It was a bad sprain. And there was a doctor there was a little boy playing in a little tin box. And the doctor smacked him in the head and took the tin box, and he pulled out what looked like a hollow nail. And he wiped it with a piece of dried cotton, and he was going to stick it in my ankle to bleed me, to take the swelling down, because they didn't have any ice.
Wow.
Or refrigeration. And I told him he couldn't do that because there was no antiseptic. He didn't have any antiseptic on it. And I'd lost a lot of friends to HIV in Manhattan, around that time. And I said, don't you know about AIDS? And he said, that doesn't exist in this country. And so I wouldn't let him bleed me because of the lack of antiseptic. So they were not happy with me. There was no American translator on set that day. So this was all via Cantonese, via Mandarin, kind of like, no, you can't do that to me. Yes, you can. And so, to speak up for yourself felt like I was being a problem, but I'm grateful in hindsight that I didn't let them do that. So long story short, we went to an ice house. They bought a big block of ice. I put my foot up on the block of ice that night and it melted, and I didn't get a day off. And every shoot after that, I had to tightly wrap my ankle in an ace bandage, and they would put makeup on it to help it disappear. And in the final scenes, like the final fight where I take on Trevor again, any of those spin kicks, if you watch it, have to be jump spin kicks because I couldn't rotate on my hurt ankle. So, you just improvise. If you can't do a spinning kick, you jump. And thank God I was able to do that.